Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20. Joining me for another week of Parramatta and NRL news as we enter the international slate of the season are my good mates, Sixties and Clint. Fellas, fantastic to have you on board. I'll start, as always, with you. Sixties, how's your week been, mate?
Look, not too bad, mate. It's starting to get back into the swing of things. It's obviously been busy with a few other things that I've had to tidy up at home. But, now getting back into the swing of things. Had the first bumpers up in some time published today. Had a BGA meeting that I attended on Monday, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in our podcast. But, yeah, looking forward to some footy this weekend, and we're really not that far away from the pre-season starting. So it'll be all guns blazing very soon for the TCT pre-season.
And it's going to be a very big pre-season for the club, we imagine, with what we hope to be a pretty strong cadre of young players being in the mix. So very keen to see your reports on that as they develop. Sixties and Clint, always a pleasure to have you on this podcast, mate. And now that we're once a week, we've got you as a regular, which is a fantastic thing for us, mate.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, gentlemen. It's a interesting time of year, isn't it? When you sort of rolling into what I suppose the NRL and the and the global rugby league body, I hope, is international season. But look, I'll be lying if I said I don't miss watching our boys every week, gents. It's I think I don't think I'm alone in saying this, but definitely getting itchy feet and keen to hear some more Eels news, which we'll touch on some of that tonight. But yeah, we'll do a full preview of the international footy and get our little dose of rugby league as we progress into the off season.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are we now? We're like 6 weeks since the last Eels NRL game.
Yeah, round 26 it was for us. So you had a bye week and then 4 weeks of finals. It's been a long time since Parramatta action.
Yeah. Well, this is actually week 7 now, isn't it? So, some of our boys have almost had their full off-season break. That's how long it's been since they played.
Yeah, so they're going to enter the preseason hopefully very fresh, barring the boys involved in the international slate of games. So it'll be what we imagine is the complete opposite of this year's prep, where we had the World Cup impacting every team, but obviously the Eels too. So, yeah, they're going to have every reason to be fit and firing for the preseason. And before we get into our full wrap-up or I suppose previewing of other stuff that's happening as well, let's have a quick shout out to the sponsors of the show. As always, thanks to Big Swing Golf, Northmead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, helping us make each and every episode. Thanks, boys. Thanks, fellas. All right, let's get right into it.
News team, assemble!
And I wouldn't call it sparse, but it's not a busy week of Parramatta news, which is to be expected. We are still hunting for signings to round out our top 30, but we did have a confirmation of one of our top 30 pickups. We spoke about it in the past, boys, but Kelma Tuolangi has been made official to the Parramatta Eels. It's what amounts to the rest of his lifetime contract with the Manly Seagulls, so a 2-year deal with the Blue and Gold. We're not sure what split is the between the Seagulls and the Eels, but we do know that Parramatta love to have a what's the word I'm looking for here? Subsidised contract. Yep, there you go. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the Tuolangi pickup. I think he'll be a solid acquisition. I don't think any of our stances would have changed too much since we last spoke about it.
No. I think it's, really all that we've had since then is simply official confirmation.
Yeah, and so, at very basic levels, the maths on it is Andrew Davey out via retirement, Kelma Tuolangi in, and Davey obviously was a great find for us as a prospect going back a few years, but I think it's fair to say that Tuolangi should be a net positive to the roster. That's not to say that Davey was a negative, but Tulang is 24 years old, prototypical build for an edge forward. Hasn't realised all his potential. A lot of the sort of boxes being ticked for the Brad Alpha special here.
Yeah, it seems to be the prototypical. You spoke about a prototypical build for a back rower. What we're really talking about is a prototypical Eels recruitment in this regard, isn't it? Like a player who hasn't realised his potential at his previous club. The Eels looking for a bargain buy, managing to get a bit of subsidised contract as well, which again they don't mind doing, and looking for BA to work some magic to help a player maybe fully realise his potential, or to simply, plainly and simply, get a bargain value recruit.
And speaking of recruitment, the Eels in their chase for an outside back, or whether it's a premium outside back or a way to bolster their back line, continues. Although the rumour mill's starting to get into gear a little bit. 60s, you can take this one away from me, mate, but maybe the Eels might be on the trail of an outside back.
Yeah, there's a bit of a rumour circulating around at the moment, and we don't really deal too much in rumours here. Obviously, we get a lot that gets sent to us, and we maybe try and dig a little bit deeper and see if there's any facts to it. But as a site, we generally don't. We generally steer clear of it because, as most people can imagine, the number of rumours that float around during any given year are just so numerous. And not only that, a lot of them are absolutely ridiculous. So, but given that the Eels are looking desperately for outside backs, and given that pace is seems to be a prerequisite for who we are looking to recruit, there's a rumour floating around that we are adding an outside back from the Shire to the roster, and a name that could possibly fit the bill, and seems to be the name that a lot of people are throwing out there, is Connor Tracey. Whether that is, I should emphasise, there is absolutely no confirmation, nothing even giving any weight to it that's leaking out of the club itself. So I want to make that very clear. This is pure rumour stuff floating around, but yeah, who knows? There could be something to it. If there is, let's just go down the path. If there is, would that be a positive signing for you fellas?
Quinn, I'll let you lead this one off, mate.
Look, you have to look at it from a number of different positions. And, one is that we have to fill out our top 30. Two, we want to have quality depth and players capable of playing NRL and hopefully extended levels of NRL in the case of an injury. And three, the needs of the top 30. You touched on the fact that we need speed. Couldn't agree more with that sentiment. It's something that we're lacking as a whole across our backline at the moment. Connor Tracey is an example of a player with lots of speed. Look, he's someone that's sort of, I don't know whether I refer to him as a consistent first grader, because although he's played a lot of first grade over the past 2, maybe 3 seasons at Cronulla, he probably hasn't been in their top pick 17 with everyone available across that same period of time. So, but there's absolutely a rugby league player there, and whether you consider him a better option than what we've currently got, you probably find a couple in the camp of yes, he is, and then you probably find a couple in the camp that go, oh, maybe or probably not. To answer your question in full, though, a net positive, yeah, absolutely. This is a guy that can play multiple positions. I'm not entirely certain if he's home centre, fullback, wing. He's played he played most of his juniors in the halves as well. I actually think he may have even debuted against us while playing for South Sydney a number of years back. But look, he's a guy that could absolutely add some value. But is it that blue chip outside back signing? No, but it is someone that would add value if that signing were to eventuate.
Okay, 40, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, utility in the back line is a valuable asset, and kind of Tracey's arguably one of the best in the game at it. And it's not like he's, a sort of subpar like player at each of those spots and can cover them in that regard. I think he's a pretty solid centre wing option, decent backup fullback to go there as well, which fits nicely for us. There was some talk when he was sort of, not right now, but earlier in the season, when he was talking about, needing to find another club, that he might be available for 2025. And if that was the case, I wouldn't be interested. I think like that's, you're not getting that much value out of him. But if he's available for this season coming, then yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it's a good pickup. I think he'll probably come in and play centre for us. But, depending on who stars in the preseason, if someone else is having a, knockout, lights out preseason, he can easily shift to another position, which is the benefit of having a player like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't call it the term's so overused these days, but an X-factor pickup, but it'd be very hard to criticise it.
Yeah,
A shrewd investment.
Yeah, exactly, Quinn. Exactly, a shrewd pickup.
The player that I would like to see the Eels look into, and it might be a bit of a controversial call at the moment given some current circumstances.
I feel like he's going to feature prominently in the NRL section of this podcast.
Yeah, it is Josh Addo-Carr.
Yeah.
Because...
Or Josh Faux Pas, as we call him these days.
Yeah. Look, I think that the Eels have some internal options to cover different positions. Now, when I talk about internal options, I'm talking about potentially swapping of positions. We know that from the start of the year or early in the year that Clint Gutherson proposed that if the Eels could attract a quality game-changing fullback, that he would be prepared to change positions. And that came from him. It wasn't a wild suggestion by the club. Now, would that be Connor Tracey? Not so sure. Could be. It could be. Maybe the Eels are looking for that to happen, in which case you'd be talking about Connor Tracey going to fullback and Clint Gutherson going to centre. BA doesn't like to have a lot of players changing and swapping and changing positions. That simple one, it could work. The other one that was floating around, especially after the last round when Dylan Brown shifted to fullback when Gutho was injured, was Gutherson again moving to centre, Dylan Brown going to fullback, and potentially someone like Ethan Sanders going into the halves. Now, I don't think anything's changed with regard to Ethan Sanders and where he will eventually be, being that he's made an agreement to join the Raiders in 2025. So I'm not sure that the Eels would toy with that idea now to do it just for one season. Not unless they feel that they have someone who could come in 2025 into the halves and do a real good job almost straight away. So that remains to be seen. But even with all those scenarios, do we feel that we still lack pace out on the wing? I certainly do. Sivo had a less than stellar season, and he is now 30 years of age,
thereabouts. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of Parramatta supporters out there who feel that he's maybe gone past his best, and especially when it comes to his work in yardage. There's never a question about is he still a threat within the opposition red zone? If he's given a bit of space and maybe only one or two players to beat, there's few defenders who can bring Sivo down. But when you're talking about the important role of wingers from the backfield, not too sure that he really met his KPIs this season. In fact, I'm certain he didn't meet his KPIs this season. And Sean Russell, well, Sean's still early in his career. He's got decent pace. He scored some good tries, with his acceleration, getting to the corner. Some tries that I didn't think he was going to get there, but he found a way to get the ball down over the line. Is he blessed with blistering pace? No. But he's probably got, and you can't question his effort from the backfield. He doesn't have the size of Sivo, but he seemed to fight more for yardage. So, people aren't critical of Sean Russell in the same way that they are maybe critical of Micah Sivo. So, look, I think given what we saw at the start of the year and the number of times that we made line breaks but didn't have someone with the pace that we needed to finish them off, whether it be a Connor Tracey on the wing or my preference, a Josh Addo-Carr, we definitely need that pace out there, somewhere out wide. And if it can't be at centre, it definitely has to be on the wing. So, I guess it's a matter of we're probably going to find out sooner rather than later if the Eels have picked up someone from the Shire, because pre-season is like 3 or 4 weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
It is really that close. So, I guess stand by.
Alrighty, let's keep it moving. We go from players to coaches now, and a bit of a surprise. I wouldn't call it a backflip 60s, but a very pleasant surprise here. One coach that we thought was departing from the Eels was current, or as of this season, current Flegg coach Craig Brennan, and he now finds himself staying at the club, moving on to a senior role. I believe he's going to be, or he's in line to become the assistant coach in the New South Wales Cup now, which is a very nice step up for him and keeps a good bloke, a good coach in the fold in a timeline where he will probably end up guiding a lot of the young talents that he's guided all the way through pathways into senior football now.
Yeah, look, that does work well, I think, from Breno's perspective and also from the club's perspective. I know that Breno has enjoyed being a head coach and has graduated from being a head coach in Pathways football through to assistant coach at Flegg, through to being the head coach at Flegg. And he did a fantastic job this season, really, of melding that team together, didn't he? When you had all those players who were elevated from SG Ball and you had the players who were already in the Flegg team, and there were a lot of changes that he made mid-season to bring in certainly the SG Ball spine and a number of selected players from the SG Ball team, and to get the team where they were really playing for each other and celebrating each other's successes with, I guess, such a blended team, was a really fine coaching job from him and his staff. And it was obviously the club as well has made the decision, and there's nothing wrong with this decision either, in bringing in Jordan Rankin, a recently retired player, into their Pathways coaching ranks. Now, Rankin was the assistant coach for SG Ball. Interestingly, next season, he and Steve O'Day was the head coach and Jordan Rankin was his assistant. They go to the Flegg level together, but their roles reverse. So Jordan Rankin becomes the head coach and Steve O'Day then takes on the role of his assistant. Now, that left Craig Brennan without a coaching role at the club. Now, obviously, if you have the sort of record that Craig Brennan does, there's going to be other clubs that come knocking on your door and making offers. So that happened. But, I mean, Breno is absolutely, he's a Parramatta man. And I couldn't have been happier to have heard the news that he's sticking around as the assistant coach for the New South Wales Cup team. You mentioned just then, 40, there's going to be players that are elevated from the Flegg team to the New South Wales Cup level. And Breno is still working as a teacher, so this is a part-time role for him. A lot of the coaches in the lower grades do work as part-timers. There's only so many coaches who can be full-time in the role. Nathan Kalis is full-time as the head coach for the New South Wales Cup team, and he's there as part of the NRL training every week. Breno will be there whenever training is outside of work hours and obviously on game day. He's no stranger to the New South Wales Cup level. Now, people will remember not back in 2022 when Jordan Rankin was captain coach of the New South Wales Cup team. He needed someone to be
in the box,
in the box in that off-field role, and Breno was basically shifted from doing assistant coach for the Fleg, working alongside Simon Wolford in 2022, to being the assistant coach of New South Wales Cup and doing all the box duties and some of the dressing room stuff at halftime, delivering the messages from his observations. So yeah, he's been involved at that level before, and there's a lot of, given his background at the club, there's a lot of players there that have come through pathways who have been coached by Breno at some stage. So I think, like you said, 40, it's going to be it's a good appointment because you've got a lot of young players that he's helped to mentor over the years, and I think it's probably a good thing that they've got someone on staff who's a very familiar face for them and someone that they know they can go to for a bit of advice, a bit of mentoring.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's keep it moving. I'll let you spearhead the next discussion, 60, since you sort of tipped it in the lead off. But the Blue and Gold Alliance have got some big plans.
Yes, they have, fellas. I went to the BGA committee meeting on Monday night. Tremendous hard working group of people, headed by Billy Richards, and they're moving towards planning their events for 2024. And as we know, they've got events such as the big Ted Solkowitz Memorial Golf Day. They've got their reunion. They have their Christmas gathering. And they also have a get together at an Eels captain's run as well. So they try to keep it as limited with those gatherings, with the big gatherings through the year, because they don't want to dilute the value of getting people together like that. But next year, my goodness, the plan, and you're well aware of this, 40, because you've been privy to to some of the discussions around this, but a big Back to Para Day, where they're trying to get as many of the former players and staff that have been involved at every grade level. So we're talking about NRL or first grade, reserve grade or New South Wales Cup, the under 20s or under 23s or third grade. So the three grades that you get, the three senior grades that you get as part of the football program, if you've been a player or an official for any of those grades, then you are, first of all, eligible to be a member of the Blue and Gold Alliance. They don't like to call it the Para Old Boys because there's actually, there are already females who are part of the organisation. And going forward with the NRLW, there are going to be more and more women who are involved and qualify as being a, inverted commas, old boy or old girl. But they don't want to call themselves old, even if chronologically they are some of a very advanced age. They call themselves the Blue and Gold Alliance, and they are a not-for-profit organisation. They're looking to keep supporting the former players and staff of the Eels. If you like, they try to do a reasonably similar job to what the Family of League does for rugby league players in general, except they're looking after the Eels players and officials. And what they're really doing is, I guess the first step is that keeping people connected, because the first step in being able to help people is knowing whether people need help or not. And the way that you know that is to keep connected with everyone. And next year's plan to have that big day where everyone gets together for that reunion. They're working on the plans for that now. So what I will say to people out there right now listening to this, and I said it in the bumpers up column, if you or someone that you know in your family or friends has played for the Eels or has been an official for the Eels, please get in touch with the Blue and Gold Alliance. Register with the Blue and Gold Alliance as a member. That way you'll get the communications. There'll be a lot of publicity that will surround next year's events, but it's always good to be registered with them to receive the emails and the communications about what events happen through the year. And as you know, 40, the events that are held are fantastic. All the players and officials, they love catching up with people some that they wouldn't have seen for decades, some that they see every year or might see regularly. But there always seems to be people that are catching up for the first time in ages, and just seeing the smiles on the faces and how much those days are enjoyed. I mean, we're fortunate that we've been invited to be part of these days and to document it for the BGA. But it's certainly a privilege being able to see all these players enjoying each other's company and reliving old days and old memories and rekindling old friendships.
Yeah, it is a fantastic initiative. Billy Richards obviously at the helm of a very great thing for the Parramatta Eels. And like you said, Sixties, if anyone listening to the podcast either is a former Eel or knows someone who is a former Eel, whether it's a player, a coach, administrator in that regard, someone that was involved with the teams, make sure to get in touch, because they want to make this thing happen, make it something really special in 2024.
Yeah, and if people aren't familiar with the Blue and Gold Alliance or have difficulty in getting in touch, get in touch with us.
Yeah, we can put you on.
We'll put you on to
get you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, boys, I think that about wraps it up for the Parramatta Eels section of the podcast. It's been a pretty quiet week for the Eels, all things considering. Hopefully we can get that outside back happening, whether it's Addo-Carr or Connor Tracey, but we have to wait and see as we get closer to and gear up for the preseason. Let's talk some general NRL, because there's been a lot happening, some good, some bad, some silly. We'll start with Josh Addo-Carr, I suppose, we get out of the way, who's had a pretty rough week, all things considering. He lost his spot in the Australian touring squad on the back of his antics at the Curry knockout, and has now had to apologise for a pretty big faux pas on social media. I don't want to get into the geopolitical tensions that are happening right now, because obviously the Israel-Palestine stuff is pretty heavy, and it's a deeply nuanced conversation that you don't want to, make a broad stroke statement on, but that's what Josh did, and he's had to apologise for it, and I think that's probably enough to move on for him from there, unless you guys have anything more to add to it.
No,
not at all.
Yeah,
no,
so
we'll move on.
Well, there's other podcasts you can get your hot takes for and that sort of thing. So he made a mistake. He's apologised for it, and the apology actually was pretty good. So I don't know if he has a good team writing for him, or if that was coming from the heart. But well done to him for quickly owning up to it. Let's move on, because there's been some well, not player movements per se, but there's some weird stuff happening on the market. Alex Twal, who was told he was free to go and was being linked to the Bulldogs, I think, is now potentially staying at the West Tigers. Peak West Tigers, I suppose. So well done there. Josh Curran has been told he's free to negotiate with rival clubs. That's an interesting one there. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid player right there. A guy that can play middle or edge. Was a Parramatta prospect, funnily enough. Was poached by the Roosters on a very, very lucrative deal going back in the day. But yeah, he's being considered surplus to needs at the Warriors. I can tell you're in on it, 60s. What about you, Clint? Do you like the idea of Curran coming back to the club that he was once a junior at?
Yeah, look, it this it's kind of a case of, oh, had this happened 2 months ago, I would have said we need to find a way to make it happen. But we touched on it before with the Connor Tracey rumor. We really need outside backs, and we're probably well sorted for forwards. But stranger things have happened, and there might be some other movements within our own club that we're not currently information that we're not currently privy to, that might make this an opportune signing and a good option for us. But at present, as it stands, I think we've just about wrapped up our forwards, and it's the outside backs that'll be the focus for us. But that's not to take anything away that Hills District boy, good Parramatta Junior Rugby League club, the Hills District Bulls. Josh would be a welcome addition under the right circumstances. I just don't think it's the right circumstances for our club at the minute.
Yeah, and look, I'm probably going to echo that. Full well 40, my opinion on Josh Curran. He's always been a player that I would take back in a heartbeat. I don't know that our roster necessarily allows for that right now, and especially with just adding Tuolangi to it, it's it feels like he'd be a quality player who would be perhaps surplus to the needs. I'll tell you one thing, I would be stunned if he doesn't have numerous clubs.
Yeah, he's got to have a few suitors for sure.
Calling on his player agent to have a bit of a chat. So
hear me out, fellas. Hear me out. Sack the back line, stack the pack. That's a political slogan for you right there. Sack the backs, stack the pack. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think you could make it work if you were to pick him up. But it, again, depend on your cap space and what you can do in the back line, because you couldn't go out and sign him if it meant compromising the back line. If you can get him and then go get a quality addition to the back line, then sure. And then you just pick your best 17 from there, and you've got some great depth. Okay, but yeah, if signing him meant compromising in the back line, then it feels like you're taking one step forwards, 2 steps back.
It's a pity that. Well, I think the crucial player that we have missed from the lineup this year, and that's not saying, it was unfortunate that we lost Isaiah Papali'i, because I think, you know how I felt about Ice, but Murata's capacity to play both backline in the centres as well as edge and middle in the forwards was unique. And
I mean, it was Wiki-esque, wasn't it? He is very much a modern day manifestation of Ruben Wiki.
Yeah. His presence in the squad helped us to cover scenarios where the Eels could lose a back, and you could have him in your team and swap him out to the centres, either in your selected team for the week or during a game, and you weren't going to be let down by his presence out wide. So we haven't been able to really recruit another player like that. I think there was the hope that Momasia was going to be close to a similar type of versatility, but Jira certainly didn't work out this season. And I guess there's rumours about players that have been tapped on the shoulder, that the Eels won't stand in their way if they happen to get a contract offer in another club for next season. And maybe you'd pursue someone like Josh Curran if that sort of space became available. But I think we truly have to look at those spots that we have left and add 2 outside backs and potentially someone who can cover spine positions as the other player in those 3 spots that we have left in the top 30 roster. So because we don't have the backup, we don't have the backup in the halves, and well, we would have if theoretically, if Ethan Standers was staying and was a long-term prospect to stay, then he would be a genuine New South Wales Cup player next season. I'm not sure whether they're going to play him in New South Wales Cup, given that he's moving on to the Raiders in 2025. I don't know what their plans are around Ethan Sanders, or whether they even look at doing some sort of deal before next season comes around. But again, that's a whole other topic. So, yeah. But anyway, interesting about Josh Curran. I wouldn't have seen the Warriors look to offload him.
I mean, I know that they've had a big breakout year with a couple of guys really emerging around the forward pack, but I would have thought he would have been a big piece moving forward. So, yeah, interesting news there. Be very keen to see where he lands. Hopefully not at a contender, because we don't need the rest of the Premiership contenders strengthening their rosters, but that's most likely how it's going to shake out. And real bad news for the NRL. Terrible news. Apparently, Tigers chairman Lee Hadjipantuas is actually on the hot seat finally. Truly awful news for everyone but the Tigers. Fantastic news for them. Evidently, this is from Rugby League Mole, so take that with whatever amount of sodium you need. But his refusal to obey requests from the principal sponsors, the Holman Barnes Group, which is that Bryden Lawyers? No, that's his company. Okay. But apparently the principal sponsors or principal owners of West Tigers have told him to essentially pull his head in and stop being in the media every day or every second day is falling on deaf ears. So it's a bit of a standoff there. And what complicates it is he's just been re-elected by the board, so I don't know what sort of protocols, because I think their constitution is actually quite convoluted in terms of removing the chairman. So I don't know if there's like special protocols they can enact to get rid of him. But it looks like there's a bit of a standoff out at Tiger Town. But, for their sakes, they would probably want to see the end of him. But then again, sometimes the devil is better. So if any club could find someone worse than Lee Hadjipantuas as chairman, it would be the West Tigers.
Yeah, it just feels like another Tiger Town story, doesn't it? I mean, it just feels so typical, unfortunately, for West Tigers supporters, that there is always some sort of drama that's going on. And more often than not, it seems to be behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's the compounding snowball effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's at the center of that spider web.
Yeah, and so what tips in his favour is that if he goes, the $1 million principal sponsorship goes with him from Bryden's lawyers. So that's a big black hole to have to replace. The West Tigers aren't exactly, I know that they're a popular team in terms of juniors, but not the most marketable team right now on a corporate level. So that could be a big issue. But, yeah, I mean, it has just been a clown fiesta for years under his guidance. So it'd be in their best interest to move on. But who knows? Who knows? All righty, let's keep it moving. On to some interesting news. Kebra Park Boys has split with the Gold Coast Titans to join up with Sydney club, the South Sydney Rabbitohs. They've inked the 3-year deal. These things don't guarantee that all the kids will end up signing with the club, I suppose, but it does give them a strong running on the inside to get the first look at and first signing opportunities for these kids. But Kebra Park obviously popularised by players like Benji Marshall, more recently Payne Haas and Reece Walsh. Pretty bold move from the South Sydney Rabbitohs.
And I find it interesting that a school can link with a club like that.
It seems anti-competitive, doesn't it? Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not in the players' best interest, arguably.
Well, I'm assuming that Kebra Park is a public high school. That's a state government high school, isn't it? Kebra Park High.
Let me just Google, but I'm pretty certain you're right.
I don't think it's part of the private school system.
So we need to understand that there's a memorandum of understanding between Kebra Park and the South Sydney Rabbitohs Rugby League Football Club that they are now partners in junior development, or is this sort of just something that's like, look, you're going to get first shot at our boys. We want to have a relationship
as an NRL affiliation. So right. I imagine it would have to be getting first dibs. You couldn't sign exclusivity contracts. That's not how the NRL operates in terms of the juniors, right? Once you're at an age to sign a contract, whereas junior or senior, with any sort of club, there is no exclusivity. But it would give...
Well, I can't...
I can't imagine that a high school could have any say in who their players link with for when they finish their schooling, or even during their schooling. It's it would be as if the school is acting as the player agent.
Yeah.
And a restraint of trade at that.
The only thing that I can assume is that, and I haven't read the article on this, but that any sort of understanding that exists between the Rabbitohs and Keebra Park High would relate to things like providing equipment and development opportunities for their players via things such as training camps, apprenticeship camps, things like that.
Absolutely.
The sort of thing that you used to see happen at Parramatta when Fieldsy was there, and he would have the apprenticeship camp that would happen every year when he'd bring in the distance players from country New South Wales, from Queensland, from New Zealand, and they would do a week of camp in over the middle of the pre-season, which would then tie in with junior rep team trials, and they would participate in the trials, and then go back to their homes where and they basically would have, most of these players had a contract of sorts that tied them with the Eels, but there was a decision that was made that they would stay at home to finish their schooling, or would come down to the Eels at an older age than say than a Harold Matt's age. They might come down for SG ball or Jersey flag, but wouldn't come down any younger. They'd let them stay at home to finish their schooling, or until such time that they were old enough to leave home. So I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of apprenticeship camps that they'd be involved in, the Rabbitohs, sending staff up there to work with the players. You'd have to think there's got to be something in it for the Rabbitohs, in terms of
you don't invest those sort of resources without getting a strong kickback, right? In terms of the talent, so
maybe it works the other way, John. Maybe it's that the Rabbitohs are able to place their Queensland contracted players, the younger ones.
Yeah, instead of having to fully relocate them. Yeah, that's actually not a bad shout.
So the Keebra Park program,
they're in an elite program, but they don't have to fully relocate to New South Wales.
Yeah, that's it. And so the Keebra Park becomes like a local resource in Queensland for South, rather than being the other way around, where South have the any sort of shot at the players that at Keebra Park, that our Souths are more involved in placing elite Queensland talent at Keebra Park. So that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Alrighty, well, we'll have to wait and see how that relationship plays out and whether it benefits South Sydney in any meaningful way. It does feel like Keebra Park has sort of not fallen off, but Palm Beach Currumbin sort of risen up as probably one of the premier feeders in that same district. So be interesting to see how it works out for South Sydney. A couple pieces of bits and bobs before we get into the Pacific Test previews. Forgot to talk about it, but was it the Battle on the Reef, which should have been called the Beef on the Reef, and they could have served surf and turf. But a couple of Eels involved in that one there. Junior Barlow up against, was it Ben Hannett, I believe? And Reagan Campbell-Gillard up against Jason Taumalolo. I don't know if you guys saw it, but Junior violently dispatched of Hannett. That was a complete mismatch in the first round. Absolutely destroyed him. And Reg, although it was a split decision, I thought that was pretty generous to Jason. I thought he pretty thoroughly outboxed Taumalolo on that one, and actually looks like pretty competent as a boxer for a guy that doesn't have a background like Junior does.
Yes, yeah. So they did what, the best part of a month of boxing?
Yeah, just about a month of boxing camp. Yeah. yeah, Reg, he had the sort of the cagey left arm out there, kind of zoning and obscuring Tamalolo's vision. Did a good job trading, and Junior, who has a strong background in boxing, no surprises that he was able to account for Hannett in the way he did. And thankfully, the referee didn't allow the fight to go on, because that would have been gross negligence. And we've seen a bit of that with our boxing MMA in recent times. I think Tim Zoo's last fight, the ref let the fight go on for about a round and a half longer than it should have. And he was literally lining up punches against his American opponent, which was just awful. But yeah, well done to the Eels boys. And thankfully, they look like they got out unscathed, which is a big thing for me. No broken wrists, no broken facial components. So
cheekbones.
Yep, exactly. There's a lot that can go wrong in even just a concussion can just linger massively. So we got out unscathed, it looks like, and the boys can now, Junior now jets off to join Samoa and captain them, which we'll talk about very shortly. But Reg, I believe, should be clear to get back into preseason training. And
yes.
One little bit of good news, nice news to finish up on before we get into the previews. Former Parramatta Eel and one of my favourite junior prospects of all time, Bevan French, has won the Super League Man of Steel boys. So well done to Bev there, and good to see him carving up in the English Super League.
Yeah, they're in the grand final this week.
Against Catalans, Wigan versus Catalans this week, to decide who will take on Penrith for the World Club Challenge.
Yeah, and the other thing too to mention is we've got a current Eels NRLW player, Mahalia Murphy, who is participating in the current season of SAS Australia.
I missed that. I did not know that. Yeah. So I'm not much of a free-to-air TV watcher these days. So there you go. You got me for a good one there, 60s.
Yep. So she's in the current season, and there's actually a bit of a Q&A article with her in the Blue Mountains Gazette that I was reading, and of course, the old question, why on earth are you doing this show, was just experience something a bit different, and different challenge, different environment. Well, it's over in the deserts of the Middle East, I think, that they're doing this season. So talk about a harsh environment and a different environment. That's
Tatooine in Star Wars, isn't it?
Yeah. So quite the challenge for them. So and of course they really dig deep into the people that participate in this show, with trying to dig out their personal demons and challenges, and get them to find an inner resolve to take on the challenges. So it'll be interesting to see how the show evolves for Mahalia. So yeah. And now our own thoughts on this season's first round of matches in the Pacific Challenge.
Yeah, so we got the two dueling sets of Pacific Championships in the male and female spaces, and then later in the month, which we'll cover in another podcast, Tonga take on England in a 3-game series. So that's not until the 23rd, I believe. So we've got a couple of weeks on that one there, or a bit under 2 weeks, sorry, if I can do basic maths. Let's start with the Pacific Championship Women's Edition, kicking off on Saturday the 14th. The Jillaroos taking on the Kiwi Ferns, 6 o'clock p.m, Queensland Country Bank Stadium, so the Cowboys' home stadium right there. You got Upton up against Nichols at fullback, Chapman and Robinson on the wings for the Aussies, Biddle and Tufanga on the wings for the Kiwis. Surgis and Kelly, they're from the same club, so crazy all-star pairing in the centres right there. Up against Parker and Hufanga, the Wrecking Ball. That's a great matchup right there. In the halves, former Eel Ashley Quinlan will help steer the Kiwis around alongside Racine McGregor. Taryn Aiken and Ali Brigginshaw are a superstar pairing for the Aussies. Front rows see Amato and Elliston up against Hilmoana and Tia Karangi Katoa. In the dummy half slots, Kiwi Davis takes on Brooke Anderson, another former Eel there. You got Kezi Apps and Olivia Koenig on the edges against Tessa Poole and LaShawn Albert Jones. Samaima Taufa, I keep saying that, former Eel, up against Georgia Hale. Samaima, obviously an outstanding player and is going to be huge for the Aussies there. On the interchange, you got Tonagato, Johnston, Charrington, one Eel rep there for the I was about to say the blue and gold for the green and gold, and Showy Bent. And on the Kiwi side, you've got Nathan Wong, Nevada George, again, former Eel, Fogavini and Pasacala. Geez, Fogavini, that's so you got one of the most Italian surnames you've ever seen playing for the Kiwis. There you go, interesting. And then extended rosters feature Lauren Brown, Emma Manzelman, Kiwi Joseph, up against Abigail Roach, Shayelle Robbins-Retty, Tiana Davison, and Capri Payakau, a current Eel. So nice to say current instead of former there. No doubt this is probably the pick of the matches in the Pacifica women's space. Aussies up against the Kiwis, and they lead it off. The other game we'll cover very shortly, but it's Samoa versus Fiji. But the winner here takes a big step towards claiming the title, obviously.
Yeah. Look, it's hard to go past Australia in this match.
The Kiwis will no doubt be fired up, and they've got some real great weapons in this team. Obviously, a lot of eyes will be on Hafanga and the matchup. I'm not sure if he takes on Surges or Kelly because international settings can always see players swapping sides and whatnot. But the Aussies will be strong favourites. I don't think there's a betting line out for this one here yet. But not to say the Kiwis can't beat the Aussies, boys, but they'd be outsiders.
Yeah. I'm going to tip that Australia win this by 13 plus.
Yep. Clint, how do you see this one playing out, mate?
I'm feeling even a little bit more bullish. I'm going to go 20 points or more.
I will tackle you guys sort of going the opposite way. I will say this one will be a little bit closer. I think the Aussies will prevail, but maybe by single digits. I think maybe the Kiwis come out and they'll be fired up, and if they can maintain the rage, that's obviously the key part here. Is it's all well and good to come out for 20 minutes and bash and barge and hit hard, but if you can't keep those fires stoked, then the Aussies will just run over the top of you. But hopefully this can be a very close one. I'll tip an Aussie victory, but by about 8 points.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so the other fixture in the first round of the Pacific Championships Women's Edition is the Fetu Samoa up against the Fiji women, 1:45 p.m. on Sunday the 15th. This one's taking place at Santos National Football Stadium, Port Moresby. So this would be a very fired-up crowd, one would think. Even if they haven't got a vested interest in this game, they'll still be out in droves, I dare say. Just looking through the two teams here, see if we can recognise anyone. Patessa Leo, former Eels pathway prospect right there. Lindsay Tui, current Eels talent and NRLW rep. So good to see there. Serena Naitoka was once an Eel in our first season. I think she's at the West Tigers now. He said with an inflected question mark there. Then we got, what else? Destiny Brill's a current NRLW player. Nuasala, Pahuka Berryman Duff. There's a Parramatta Eel. And Tamira Liardi, another former Parramatta Eels pathways prospect. So, yeah, a couple of Eels or former Eels repping here, mostly for Samoa. So I suppose that's where our hearts will be back in this one here. And I don't know, this one is a very open game for me to try and get a read on, boys. Not as many established NRL stars in this one compared to the other games, which means that it's a great sort of blank canvas for these girls and these women to carve out their own sort of a folk legend with here. But it also means it's very difficult to get a beat on who's going to win. Yeah,
look, I think based on a little bit of familiarity with certain players, I'll be tipping the Samoan team to get the job done here, but I have no confidence in talking about any sort of margins or how it will play out. You know what? I'm hoping to see some fast open football in this one. You know that's going to be typical of Fijian play. It's whether they're playing rugby league or rugby union. Fijian football is basically throw that ball around. And I think the Samoan team might be prepared to accommodate them there. So I'm actually thinking it might be an entertaining game to watch.
Here's to hoping, which brings us to the male space, where at 8:10 p.m. on Saturday the 14th of October at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, Townsville. So it would be a double header, I imagine then. I didn't realise these things had lined up like that. You got the Kangaroos taking on Toa Samoa. Captaining the Kangaroos is James Tedesco up against Sua Leuvi Fa'alongo. Dylan Edwards, who got called into the team following Josh Addo-Carr's cut in the wake of the Koori knockout stuff, will be on the wing. He makes his international debut out of position, but that's to be expected, I suppose. He'll be opposite Selwyn Cobbo for Toa Samoa. Murray Talangi's, speaking of, well, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not abandoning, but...
Change of allegiance.
Yeah, change of allegiance here, which is always good to see, though. It is always good to see defecting to a... I hate to use the term lesser, but, it's still a developing rugby league country in regards to Australia, New Zealand and England. But bolstering international game, Murray Talangi going onto the flank for Toa Samoa, well done there. But it's a good backline because he's opposite Brian To'o. In the centres, the Hammer, Tabuai Fido and Katoni Staggs, up against Isaac Tungor and young Tonamapia. So the centres for Samoa would have been a bit stronger if Jerome Luai hadn't busted his shoulder, because that means that Stephen Crichton is in at 5'8", which is a bit of a decision, but that's where they're at. So he would have been in the centres otherwise, which helps them there. But Crichton's up against Munster. Parramatta's own Dejan Arce up against Delhi Cherry Evans. So obviously a bit of golf and talent and experience in the halves there, which is still remains the biggest single issue for these tier 1.5, I suppose, because they're not tier 2, but they're not tier 1 either. The spine remains the biggest issue for these tier 1.5 teams, and we see that with Toa Samoa's lineup here. In the front row, you've got Haas up against Utoi Kamanu, Tino Fa'asuamali up against our very own Junior Barlaw, and Ben Hunt up against Gordon Chen Kum Tong. So it's a pretty good front row for the Toa Samoans there. Stefano and Junior, no chump change, and Gordon's one of the better young dummy half prospects going around. But that front row for the Aussies obviously outstanding. Haas and Tino Fa'asuamali, just pure class. On the edges, Cam Murray and Liam Martin up against Luciano Leilua and Connolly Lemelu, who was a bit of a breakout player for the Dolphins. It was the Dolphins, wasn't it, this season? Or was he still... Was he still a Dolphin or a Cowboy?
He became a Dolphin this year.
Yeah, and he was a bit of a breakout player for them. At lock forward, Isaiah Yo up against Keenan Palacia. On the interchanges, it's Grant, Collins, Carrigan, and Cotter up against Spencer, Lenu, Terrell May, Helam Lukey, and Ronald Volkman. So a pretty good interchange there for the Toa Samoans. Extended rosters, not that anyone really cares, given that the top 17 is probably locked in, but you've got Nico Hines, Jake Trbojevic, Thomas Flegler, Valentine Holmes. Holmes obviously still suspended for one game, barring they are definitely not taking drugs picture. And then Royce Hunt, Justin Matamua, Greg Marzu, and Tommy Talau. Main official Grant Atkins. In the box, Phil Henderson running the sidelines, Wyatt Raymond and... Sorry, Phil Henderson and Wyatt Raymond running sidelines. In the box, Ashley Klein. So yeah, start the season off with a bang here. Australia going to be probably close to unbackable favourites, but Toa Samoa coming off a World Cup campaign where they turned a lot of heads en route to making the grand final. They would want revenge here, but can they do it?
No, not with the respective spines as they are.
Mm-hmm. It is just such a bottleneck, isn't it? They've got a great back line. They've got some quality in the forward pack. They've got a decent interchange. Obviously, we love Dejan and he's done a good job for Parramatta Eels, but he's up against Delhi Cherry Evans. Like that,
yeah.
You're talking 300 games of NRL experience plus, 30 plus rep games of experience. It is a gulf of, just knowledge and experience and understanding of the game.
Yeah, the other thing I'm a bit unhappy about is naming Dylan Edwards as a winger. Now, I think Dylan Edwards is an absolutely brilliant player. His role in the Panthers three-peat should not in any way be underestimated. His game back in 2022 in that grand final against our Eels was one of the most impressive fullback performances I've ever seen in a grand final. He is truly one of the key factors in Penrith doing 3 premierships on the trot. But selection on a wing when he doesn't go close to playing on a wing. I don't know. I mean,
it's a bit of a lifetime achievement award, isn't it, for being part of the 4 grand finals and not getting a rep jersey.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. Now, he's not going to feel that way because he's finally got an Australian jersey, and tremendous congratulations to him for that. He is probably worthy of having an Australian jersey.
For sure.
But, I also feel like okay, I know that Josh Addo-Carr lost his spot because of the off-field stuff, but is there not another winger that's available that is deserving of Australian selection that could have been brought in to play on the wing? I mean, is it now simply like, look, we'll just select the players that we think are the best that are available at the moment, regardless of position, and we'll find a spot for them. Because if that's the case, fine. But I don't necessarily believe that should be the factor in putting together a team, especially when some of these roles now are so specialised, and winger is one of those specialised positions now. And I can understand when you've got players who can swap between those positions, most notably in teams where you've got a winger who, when the fullback is out, can be called upon to play fullback. But I'm trying to think that whether I've ever seen Dylan Edwards play on the wing, and I'm struggling. And I'm not saying he can't, but I'm struggling to think, when was the last time he played wing? Has he ever played wing at senior level? Maybe it's worth,
Not to my knowledge.
Bit of a look on a rugby league project. Maybe they've got it listed. But anyway, fellas, sorry for taking that off on a bit of a tangent there. But whilst you're talking amongst yourselves, I'm going to do a bit of a dig into his background. So take it away.
Quinn, I'll throw this to you. Australia is probably going to win this. So I don't think that's unreasonable to put out there. What would be a positive outcome for Samoa from this game in a defeat?
Staying in the fight and not letting the scoreboard get away, and making Australia work for the victory. It's a fait accompli that Australia will win. But if they have to win it in the last 5 minutes, then that should be a deemed success for the Samoan team. And look, this is a very different Samoan team to the one that took field at Old Trafford in the World Cup final last year. I think there's only about 4 or 5 players from that side that ran out on the field, or from the 17 that took their place in that game. So there's a couple of guys in here. Dejan Arce being an example of such. But this is a really big occasion for them. So I hope, from a selfish perspective, firstly, none of our players get injured. Secondly, a guy like Dejan Arce comes out of this game all the better for the experience, for having played against this caliber of quality of team and players, because it's only going to set him and the Eels in good stead moving forward.
Okay, I have an answer, fellas.
All right, gave you enough time.
Dive. Okay, so Dylan Edwards isn't listed as playing wing at New South Wales Cup level. He didn't play too many games at New South Wales Cup level, but from his debut in 2016 in round 18 was on the wing.
There you go.
Huge sample size.
Yep, his second game in the NRL was in round 2 of 2017, also on the wing. And from that point, since round 2 of 2017, his second NRL game, he has played one game on the wing, and that was in round 5 of 2019. But every other game since then, he has not played on the wing. And for some reason, they played in that game in 2019. They played Dallin Watini-Zalesniak at fullback and Dylan Edwards on the wing. So
I remember that particular season he had the yips, because that was the year
that he was dropping
everything, the Panthers, and we put up a couple of high balls that he was less than comfortable under.
Yeah, that was like a crossroads for his career, it felt like, where he actually got inside his own head and was dropping everything. End up getting dropped to cup for a little bit, and well done to him for not just rebuilding but elevating his game to the elite tier from there. But yeah, crazy that kind of like a Manu Vatuvei-esque moment there where it was so bad you couldn't believe it was in first grade. But like I said, went from that to being one of the most vital pieces in a three-peat. So well done to Dylan Edwards. It doesn't really contextualise the selection to the Kangaroos still, doesn't it? But, well done to him for that. He definitely deserves being picked in the squad, but you make an argument for picking him over the incumbent fullback, but then again, that would then invoke the name of Reece Walsh, wouldn't it? So lots of politics in the Kangaroo selection, I suppose. But let's move on. We've all got the Roos winning and winning handily. I don't think we need to make too many predictions there.
Yep.
Let's move on to the second game. And bearing in mind that this Pacific Championships, we did speak about it last week, but there's essentially a cup and shield in play here where the top teams will play for the premier title and the bottom teams will still be playing on the same week for the shield or whatever you want to call it. And this game here features the PNG Kumuls up against the Cook Islands Aitu, Sunday the 15th of October at 4 o'clock p.m. No surprise, this one is out at Santos National Football Stadium, Port Moresby, so the other part of the second doubleheader there, for those that couldn't put that together like me initially. Looking at these two teams, I'll just shout out some of the big names that you might recognise, boys. Kumul side, you got at fullback Alex Johnston. There's the two layup boys, Zach and Kyle. Zach, obviously the Cowboys reserve back, I suppose, who's in the centres. Kyle at 5'8". Nana McDonald is still around. He's playing on the wing. Lockie Lamb, who's in the Super League right now, playing halfback. Then you've got Jack DeBellin. I didn't realise he had Kumul's heritage there, so that's a big name there at lock forward. And after that, it's not too many we'd probably recognise there. Wellington Albert.
Dan Russell finally made his NRL debut for the Dragons this year after being around for some time.
Jacob Alec is another name I recognise there too, who's played a little bit of NRL, I believe. And then on the extended roster, Wellington Albert, who was that original, was it Penrith? The original Penrith sensation that Joey and Fitler spotted at the hotel as a hotel, not consigliere, but like the one that helps the hop. The
concierge?
Yeah, maybe the one that helps with the luggage and whatnot. So, but that's on the Kumul side. On the I2 side, you've got, speaking of young Sharks backs, Kyle Iro. Then there's Isan Masters, Stephen Masters, Brad Takarangi captaining the team at 5'8". Good to see Brad still running around, even if he's retired from the English Super League. Davey Mawali, the young South Sydney talent. Rua Ngatakura from the West. Well, he was from the West Tigers. I think he's been moved on. Zane Tedavano, Ruben Porter.
Macca, you've skipped over Macca.
Did I skip? I did too. Makasi Makatoa right there. I saw Ngatakura and I just scrolled down from there. I just realised for the Kumuls, the Apapi's not playing. Is that because the Super League's on right now? Is still on? Is he still playing Super League? Who's he play for?
I can't remember who he plays for.
Edwin Apape.
He plays for Lee Leopard, so they were knocked out.
Yeah, so maybe he's injured then, because he was one of the real breakout stars last time they played in the World Cup, and really caught a lot of eyes. So it's a shame. But yeah, and from there, I don't think there's too many other names in the Cook Islands squad. Obviously, Murata's now entrenched in the New Zealand squad, so he was one of their biggest reps prior to that for the Cook Islands. But this one's going to be, I mean, the Port Moresby crowd are going to be parochial. Like they're going to be off the charts in terms of their cheering and getting involved in this game. So that's going to be a huge boost for the Kumuls. Is it enough to get them over the line, boys?
You know what? They always lift. They just find a way to combine and play above themselves every time they take the field. I'm going to tip a Kumuls win at home.
Mm-hmm. Clint, how do you see this one playing out, mate?
Likewise. A Papua New Guinean crowd is the rugby league crowd. We're talking about the only country in the world in which rugby league is the national sport. So just let that sink in for a little bit. For anyone, that shouldn't be news to any of our listeners, but if it is, let that sink in. They are parochial, they are passionate, and they'll be riding every hit up. Rugby league crowds generally tend to follow and track the run of play. When there's a half break, you see plenty in the crowd sort of half get to their feet and the ahs and ohs as that happens. This is a crowd that'll be riding every hit up and every tackle.
Yeah.
It's damn hard to win over there, and those PNG boys hit.
Yeah.
They'll hurt you.
Yeah,
They'll
physicality will be one of the coin cards of this game. I'm going to back you too with the Cornwalls getting up on the scoreboard. Should be a very fun game to watch. I imagine there's going to be a few mistakes and a few errors in this one. That it's going to be so physical and fast that it should be entertaining nonetheless. And yeah, the crowd is always a treat for this one. And we'll probably get a bit of feedback from TC. I say TC's own, but our associate Joey Grimer there, 60s. He's entrenched deeply in the PNG program now, and he'll be out there, no doubt.
We must look to get him on the podcast, have a bit of a chat about how things are progressing up there, because he's been very busy with the pathways, getting those organised.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure we can organise to get him on and have a bit of a chat about life and work up in PNG.
And that's definitely something to look forward to in a future episode of the Tip Sheet. But for now, with the timer just ticking over an hour and 10, boys, I think we should start to wrap it all up. Another quick shout out to the sponsors of the show, Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan, and Parramatta. Fantastic sponsors. We can't ask anything more of them. They've been incredible for us and help us get our content out each and every episode. Boys, it's been a really fun episode. Got to talk some Parramatta Eels stuff, some general NRL stuff. Had a bit of a chuckle.
And something coming up for us too, mate, that we should mention before we sign off. We've got the presentation evening for the Parramatta District Junior Rugby League next week.
There you go. So give you all the feedback from that one.
We'll be bringing new news from that in next week's podcast, and a shout out to Para Leagues there as well, because their sponsorship of the Junior Rugby League in the Parramatta District is second to none. When I say sponsorship, well, basically it's their funding of the Junior Rugby League competition in Parramatta. It goes a long way to ensuring that lots of boys and girls can participate in playing rugby league, and at a cost that's extremely affordable for families. And that's what it's all about, that participation in sport for the community.
Yes, indeed. So on that note, thanks for stopping by, giving us a listen. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Go you Eels.